Hello everyone and welcome to our talk about the timing attack extension that we created for Burp Suite. We are Luiza and Inbar and we made this project for our Code Day virtual internship under supervision of our mentor Adele Miller.
So, what's this Burp Suite? Burp Suite is a very popular web penetration testing program that checks websites for common vulnerabilities. It has a lot of useful features that allow you to manipulate HTTP requests and more. Besides, it has an open source library of extensions to extend its capabilities. With this, we decided to create a time attack tool.
Timing attacks are a type of side-channel attack in which the hacker tries to compromise the system by analyzing the time it takes a login page to respond to different usernames. This can happen whenever a system does not take constant time to return a response for any username inputted, but rather the time changes depending on the input. Knowing how long a response takes for one valid and one invalid username, the attacker can check how long other usernames take to get a response, and use that to try to guess which usernames are valid. Once valid usernames are acquired, these same vulnerabilities can often be used to guess an account password, making it easy for hackers to infiltrate user accounts. This Burp Suite extension was made to allow pen testers to easily verify whether a website is susceptible to this sort of attack.
Let's talk about examples of common vulnerabilities. There are so many different mistakes that could make a login page vulnerable to time attacks. One common mistake would be to check for equality between unhashed input and valid username using the equal operator. This equality operator checks the string equality by character. In other words, if the strings are different on the first character, it will return a result slightly faster than if the strings are different on a second character, and so on. This allows the attacker to check for username validity one character at a time if the usernames are unhashed. The inputted username will be checked against the database. In some of the time, the program will iterate over the usernames in the database, and a valid username will return a response as soon as it is found, while an invalid username will check through all of the usernames in the database. This means that in general, the valid username will return a response faster in large databases. However, in a non-large database, a valid username takes longer to return a response because it takes time to gather information about the user for its response, and this situation makes the website vulnerable to time attacks.
So how does our extension work? First of all, Burp Suite must intercept an HTTP request containing login information as its parameters. The user must manually identify this request and send it to the timing attack extension. Next, the user is able to modify the request to contain new information for a chosen parameter. Once the user submits the modified request, the extension will start a timer, send the request, and then stop the timer once it receives a response. The extension will do this for each modification of the request and then return the result, the time it took to receive a response. To reduce variation and get a more accurate result, the user can tell the extension to repeat this process a given number of times for each request and then average the results. Now, before we dive into a demonstration, we wanted to elaborate a bit on how we modify the request. Our extension allows users to log into a website with different usernames and check for timing differences. To do that, they need to modify the request parameter. First of all, the user must look at the request they sent to the extension and type in the name of the parameter they wish to change. In the sample request provided here, that parameter is username. After that, they must decide on the input for the parameter. Our extension has two ways to get input, either manually, in which case our suggestion is to write one valid username and one invalid username and compare the timing differences between them, or from a comma-separated list from a file. After inputting these request modifications, the user must write the sample size for this timing attack. That is, the number of times they want to send each modified request before averaging their timings to find the result. After that, the user can click Submit and wait for the results to appear.
We created a website for testing purpose And as we see, Apache in MySQL is working, and this is our website. Now, let's see the database. Yeah, the database is working, and we have 2 users. We are going to access the user test and see how it works on the Burp Suite extension.
Okay, so I already loaded the extension over here, and I intercepted the HTTP request for the login. So now I can send the request to the extension here. And as you can see, here's the request right here. And this is the parameter name for the username, and this is the input we put in. So now we can try to do a timing attack using a valid and an invalid username. So for the valid username, I'm going to put in test because I know that's valid, and for the invalid, I will put in admin. And now for the parameter name, we know it's mail UID, so we'll just put that in here. And sample size, let's try 10. And now we click submit, and you can see the results over here. So test took a little bit longer, as you can see. And you can view the request. So here's the request that test sent, that the first one sent, the valid one. And you can see here the password 123345 mail UID was test. And here you can see it replaced the mail UID with admin for the invalid one. And you can view the valid response. So this one is the one with the valid the valid username, and you can view the invalid one. And yeah, so now the other thing you can do is you can use usernames from a file. So here's a file with called username list, and it really is just a list of comma separated usernames. So for the separator over here, we're going to put in a comma and a space because that's what separates our usernames. And the parameter name is again mail ID, and sample size, let's put 10 again. So now you can see that it gave us the results for all the usernames that were in the file, and you see like all of them got different times. So you can view the request, and it's going to let you see a request for each one. So here's request 19, request 18, and so on for every one of the usernames that we sent. And the same thing for the responses. You can see the response for each username, and they're all labeled with the number of the response and the username. And if you want, you can download the results over here by pressing download display. And here's the debug box that tells you if your download was successful. So you can check your downloads folder to find the file, and then you can close it. And the debug box will actually let you know if other things go wrong too. So if the download failed, it will tell you that. And if you also try to put, for example, the parameter, and you put the wrong parameter name, so you just put user for parameter name, and the debug box will tell you that this parameter name was not found in the request because, as you remember, the request didn't have that. So yeah, it will give you alerts, and you can use this to find the timing for different usernames.
Now that you haven't seen the extension working, it's time for the research. Test is a valid username, and Rocket4 is an invalid one. As you can see, our test website is indeed susceptible to time attacks, and a request with a valid username takes longer to respond, as I show in this graph.
So we both learned a whole lot throughout this project. Some of the lessons we learned include using Burp Suite as well as creating extensions for it. We also learned about a whole lot of different web vulnerabilities, including SQL injections, cross-site scripting, and, of course, timing attacks. We learned how to test for these vulnerabilities as well as common methods of preventing them. Finally, we also improved our skills in Python and PHP, created a Java JFrame-based graphic user interface, and improved our real-time project collaboration using Git.
There are some ways we can add this extension to improve it, right? For example, we can allow the user to annotate the parameter information instead of typing it out to prevent typing errors. We can also make it easy to use this extension to guess a password as well after the username has been found. And finally, we can make the extension automatically guess whether each username in a list is valid or invalid, given the time results for a pair of valid and invalid username.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or would just like to contact us, here is our contact information as well as the link to our GitHub repository. Thank you for listening, and let's hack the planet.